Hello, everyone. This is Jeannie White. I am actually the station manager of Passionate World Talk Radio, but right now I'm going to be a part of a discussion that we're going to have with Betsy Wertzel. And what we're doing is we have been invited by Jane Moore quite a while ago to be involved in the World Rock Against Dementia. And this is for 21. And she's invited different radio stations to come on to talk about whether it be music or just talk about what we're going to talk about today. But anyways, I want to introduce Betsy Wertzel, as she is the host of Chatting with Betsy at Passionate World Talk Radio, and she's an experienced caregiver, and she is going to provide some tips on what she has learned through the years as herself as a caregiver. So welcome, Betsy.
Hi, Jeannie. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I was a caregiver to my mother-in-law first, and then Matt. And back 20 years ago, there was really no guidance. I'll go even so far as 11 years ago with Matt. What I would suggest to caregivers is to join a support group, whether physical, if you can, if that's possible. It wasn't possible for me. Or on Facebook. There's many support groups. I have one, hashtag Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement. Doesn't matter what dementia you have. You will get support. This is where I learned my caregiver tips was from other caregivers, not from a doctor. It was from other caregivers helping me. And this is what I feel I call the old ones, the veterans. Let me clear that. The veterans, caregivers should help what I call the newbies. Throw them a lifeline. What should you do when you get that diagnosis and it hits you like a ton of bricks?
Right, it does.
Like, where do I go? What do I do? How am I going to be? How's my loved one going to be? All I can tell you is get your financial and medical POA. Power of attorney, might be called something else over in Europe, but get your finances and your end of life plan. I don't mean to sound morbid, but it's very important. How do you want the end of your life to look like? And about live in the present, but definitely get your financial power of attorney. You need that to deal with Medicare, Medicaid, life insurance, doctors, hospitals. You really need that power of attorney.
Right, because they won't help you at all, will they? Without this information.
They will not help you. No, yeah. I know that because with Medicare, with Matt, when I had to sign him up for a prescription plan, they asked me if I had power of attorney. I said yes, and I had to send them proof. Or the life insurance, I thought I sent the power of attorney, and I didn't. They wouldn't tell me anything, so I had to send it back, the power of attorney, and then they would talk to me. And this is ongoing as far as pensions. Doing the paperwork for that, they need that power of attorney.
Right. Yeah. Very vital. Yeah, it's very vital, isn't it?
Very, very vital. You really need it.
Now, what other things? What other things did you learn? Like I remember you telling me certain things about preparing for a tough bath or preparing a meal, things that you would have not normally even thought about.
Yep, the sound is going in and out, Jeannie. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the end of that.
Don't worry about it. It's technology at its best.
Yeah. I would, and I wished I did this when I found out. Instead of worrying how you're going to be, how you're going to handle it, what is your person going to be like? Enjoy the present and live for the now. Go out, have a good time, do what you could do while your loved one can still do it. And educate. I can't say this enough, Jeannie. I want to shout it on the megaphone.
Okay.
You need the caregiver. You must educate yourself about your loved one's diagnosis. Now, reading about it, living with it, I know it's two different things, but you need to read about it so you know what to expect. And you can be informed and educated. When
Mm-hmm.
your loved one gets a prescription, look that medication up. See what the side effects are. If you see any, call your doctor, but be informed. Be informed when you talk.
Mm-hmm.
Question a doctor. If you feel something's not right, it probably isn't. Go with your gut instinct. That's what I always did.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be afraid to question your doctor. Don't be afraid to get a second opinion.
Right.
I went for 3 of them myself with Matt. Excuse me. We went for 3 opinions. And back then, they really
Didn't
weren't
they,
too educated.
yeah, didn't they just discard you sometimes, though, when you were doing previously?
Yes,
Yeah.
we were blown off. Matt's company doctor, who never saw a test result, suspected that Matt had dementia. She suspected it.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctors down here who saw Matt's abnormal MRI, EEG, would not say he had Alzheimer's because he's too young. So
Mm.
the doctors were not educated 11 years ago like they are now.
Right.
And they weren't paying attention to the caregiver. Excuse me. The neurologist I go to and that Matt went to, his wife is a psychiatrist for people who have dementia. And now they're starting to pay attention to the caregiver and spending time with the caregiver, going over what to expect and, support, which was
Mm-hmm.
not like that 11 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So slow changes are happening, but the caregiver has to take it upon themselves to educate themselves. I mean, I had to, and the information highway wasn't like it is now. Of course, I didn't have a computer or smartphone back then either.
True.
But
Yeah.
excuse me, but there's a lot of information out there. You really had to sift through. There's a lot of vultures. I call them vultures who
Mm-hmm.
want to promise you a cure. And we're grasping for straws. We want to try whatever we think will work, but you have to really, educate yourself to know what is a scam. And there's plenty out there who will say, "Oh, there's a cure," or it could be
Mm-hmm.
reversed.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely join a support group. There's many seminars now on the internet, Jeannie, Teepa Snow, Dementia Spotlight Foundation. There are so many people now doing webinars because of the COVID that
Yes.
they weren't doing. So there's a lot of webinars out there and they're free. So take advantage.
Yeah. Can you talk a
You
little bit
know,
about clinical? Can you talk a little bit about clinical trials?
clinical trials. Yes. Actually, I just read in the paper. It's funny you mentioned that. I just read in my local paper. This is in New Jersey now because I live in New Jersey. They want people to try a new medication to see if it will work
Mm-hmm.
with early to moderate. There is a research place. I forgot the name of it exactly. I think it's the Memory Institute in Princeton, New Jersey. I'm sure they might be around the country. I don't know outside of the U.S. that are looking for people. There are clinical trials, but you have to fit their criteria. Um, my
Mm-hmm.
brother, my late brother, went for one, but he didn't fit the criteria till after he died. And then he called my mom and said he could come, but he was gone by then. So yes, if your loved one's interested, clinical trials, they are out there. Ask your doctor or go online
Do you
and
find that
see.
there's more clinical trials now than there were previously?
I
Do you?
think so.
Yes, more aware. But you know someone that's been in a clinical trial and it's doing very well for him. We're not mentioning his name, but we're just mentioning that we know someone that is presently in a clinical trial. Right.
Yes, and it's funny that you mentioned that because there was an article about that person in the paper yesterday, in my
Oh, was it
paper.
really about the clinical trial? Really?
Yes, I can't pronounce the name of the medication, but they really wanted to pass through the FDA to help this person. And there's more, I think, available now, more trials. Matt didn't want to go for one.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, there really wasn't that many. And it was down in Princeton. It was an hour away, and I just couldn't take him with transportation and working. But he didn't want to.
You didn't want to go.
But sure, he didn't want to go, and I couldn't, force him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would ask your neurologist about clinical trials. If you live in an area, I live in New Jersey, and I'm pretty close to a medical school. Even call them up and say, do you know of any clinical trials? Do you know where I could go?
Mm-hmm.
That Memory Institute in New Jersey is always advertising.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking for people for clinical trials. That wasn't the case 11 years ago.
No, unfortunately,
So,
but now your doctors would know too, wouldn't they? Your primary care?
one would hope.
Yes, we would
that,
hope that they would have that kind of information, but still it's good to even address it with the doctor and say, once because I don't know what happens in the very beginning, of when you've gotten that diagnosis, and it's got to be breath, you're almost like your breath stops, right? And then you say, what is, at some point, you maybe don't get all the information he's telling you, So it must be very difficult in that first moment. And then, deciding and how it's going to work, because there are some dementias that are very slow and moving, correct?
Correct.
It depends on the patient, doesn't it, really?
Yeah. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
it depends on the patient. If they have any underlying other issues with it, if they're diabetic or have heart disease, their lifespan's not going to be as long. I was very grateful that Matt was healthy.
Mm-hmm.
He was healthy other than his brain, and he lived 10 years from diagnosis. I'm going to say he had it probably at least 2 years before he was diagnosed, and I didn't know. But his mom only lasted 4 years or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
But she was already older. So it depends on the age and the health of and the condition, really, of the individual.
Okay.
Hopefully, Jeannie, doctors are not saying to people, well, actually they still are, because my brother's neurologist did this, have the attitude, well, you have dementia, there's nothing we can do anyway. So what difference does it make is really their attitude in some cases.
Right. I know you talked about that previously in different other speaking engagements you've had.
Yeah.
That the attitude of the doctor, it's almost like it's, not very encouraging to the individuals that are sitting across from him. But I'm certainly sure there may be, something that would help if not so much the patient, but the caregiver, because the caregivers has this burden on their shoulders.
Yes. And I highly suggest if your doctor shows that attitude, change doctors immediately. You don't have to put up with that.
Mm-hmm.
Find a doctor who understands, who is knowledgeable in dementia. Don't be afraid to question a doctor's knowledge.
Because you did, right?
Yeah, well, my mother wouldn't hand me the phone.
God,
I would have.
I know you should say something. That's really unbelievable. But it is true. We may laugh at it right now, but it is true that we must, just because the doctor has a white coat on doesn't mean he's God. All right. And that, there may be another doctor out there that may have some information. You have no idea, but they don't give you any hope sometimes, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, Matt's primary, and I love this doctor. And he had a great bedside manner. And he said, well, there's nothing I can do for Matt. And it frustrates me as a doctor, that I can't help him.
Mhm.
And, I would say to him, because now they do like the pre-screening as far as, drawing a clock.
Mhm.
And I said to him, well, too bad you didn't have this when Matt was showing signs. And his attitude was, well, Betsy, it would have made a difference anyway. And I was like, well, maybe not, but you could have at least believed us and listened to us.
That's right.
Find
They
a
don't
doctor
really.
who listens.
Because when we've talked, we've had shows with other caregivers on, and that seems to be one of the cries for mostly caregivers is a lack of encouragement or hope from a physician. You know,
Right. I
we
mean,
all know that
yeah,
we all know what the end result is, but it's how do we make it as comfortable as possible going through that process? Isn't that the most important thing
exactly.
about that?
I would think, like, I knew, and Matt knew he was going to die from this. He knew because of his mom.
Mm-hmm.
And, you just try to get through each day. And Jeannie, I know this could be a whole nother show, but I'm going to tell caregivers, self-care. Self-care is not an option.
It's
You
been very
need to do
important.
it.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally a matter of life and death. That's how serious I am. The mortality rate with caregivers is up very high. And if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be any good to your family member. And guess what? You're going to end up getting sick. And then who's going to take care of your loved one?
That's right. Yeah.
And I'll even be bold to say, Jeannie, it's okay for the caregiver to think about life after caregiving. It's something you should think about. And you need to keep yourself healthy so that you can enjoy life after caregiving. You have that right. You have a right to do that.
Right.
It's selfish. It's survival.
Have you heard recently? I know you have a Facebook page. Hashtag Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement. Are the caregivers getting the support from the families and friends? Like, are they now, or just are they still the same as what it was previously? Everyone seems to dwindle away. What is the process on that now?
I think it's individual.
Mm-hmm.
It depends. I still see a lot of people complaining, no support
Mm-hmm.
from loved ones. Um, well, especially now with the pandemic.
Right.
Well, they could use it as an excuse. Can't come over because of COVID.
Yeah.
But
Well, yeah, that's true. Right.
but even before COVID, people would find an excuse to abandon their loved one and even friends. Um, I've heard this. I don't know what to say to them. I feel uncomfortable. I feel bad looking at them. Um, you know what? You know who they are. If you're a family member, you're not visiting your loved one or supporting,
Mm-hmm.
you know who your loved one is. Talk to them. They can hear. And hearing is the last sense to go. And Jeannie, this gave me hope all through Matt's journey. Love wins. Dementia can rob the brain. It cannot rob the heart of love. I believe that. They know your love. They know your voice. They may not recognize your face. They know your love. They feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So show it. Show them your love. And that's
And you did
important.
that, yeah, and you did that with Matt. In fact, when you first started being a host on our station, Matt used to join us.
Yeah. Yes.
That was very, very, that'll live down for me forever. That he became part of the conversation. I mean, he didn't say much, but you knew he was there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was such a, really was, lovely. It really was a great time. It really was. But I also wanted to talk too about how important music is as they increase their into the dementia world.
Oh, so important. Matt loved Johnny Cash. Can I say that? Is that
Of
okay?
course you did.
Mention it.
Why not?
Matt loved Johnny Cash. He loved bluegrass music. So when he was having a difficult time, with me giving him a shower or shaving, I put on Johnny Cash.
Uh-huh.
And I put on music that would relax him when he went to the dentist. And near the end, his last visit was difficult. And they had music. I said, put on Johnny Cash. She put on Johnny Cash, and Matt
It was fun,
cooperated as
really. Yes, it
long
was
as he
fun.
could.
Yes.
Play their music, not the music that you like, play the music that your loved one likes. Let me
Yeah.
make that clear. Whether you like it or not, play it for them.
Yeah.
Matt liked, one time he had trouble eating, and I put on, I forgot what I put on, Johnny Cash or somebody they liked, and I got him clapping his hands, and I was putting the food in his mouth,
And he was eating. Yes.
and he was eating.
Yes. Well,
Music,
let's talk
yeah.
about the dishes. This I find fascinating. You really would never think that this would apply. But what did you come up with the dish situation for when you put the food on their dishes?
I found out actually through caregiving
Yeah.
tips to use a red dish. I had white plates.
Yeah, because I
So
can't
they
see
can't,
anything. Yeah.
right. They can't see. Their vision changes. This is just something we have to accept. I didn't know that at first,
Mm-hmm.
but their vision changes. So if you're putting, white mashed potatoes and something that's white on a white plate, they don't see it. So I brought Matt a red dish and a red bowl, which he was able to see. I mean, I still had to help him. They
Right.
can't see the fork to the side. And you have to help feed them sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But using red, bright colors, even in taking a shower, Jeannie, because our bathtub is white, Matt had trouble getting in, and then someone suggested Betsy get a bright colored bath mat, which I did, and then he was able to see it. So this is where we learn. We learn from each other,
Right.
and this is why I tell people share your tips, share your stories. We learn from each other.
You really do. Really.
Mhm.
We're coming down close to ending this. I thought we were going to do 20, but because it's such it is a good topic because there's so much you can discuss, especially because you really want to give the attention to the caregiver because your loved one is being taken care of, but who is going to take care of the caregiver? You know. So
Absolutely.
how do you handle that?
Ab-
Remember when we used to talk about it when you were on? What we say is when a caregiver got really uptight and because the person was, I don't know, yelling or talking constantly because they do that, we recommended that they go in the bathroom, right? Remember we told them to take 5 deep breaths? And so by the time the fifth, you took that deep breath, the fifth one, you were able to come out and be able to have a little clearer situation and how to handle it. So it's these little things that we want to try to provide to the caregiver. It doesn't take a lot of major things. It's just small little things to help you.
Yes. And that is part of self-care, which is important.
Mm-hmm.
I would go into the bathroom and I would play John Denver music, talk about music helping. It helped me.
Right. Yeah.
And just imagine, being in the mountains, being on the beach. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, it got more difficult as that progressed, but the caregiver has to do something strictly for themselves that they can enjoy. Whether it's 5 minutes, 2 minutes, you need it. You need that break. And you need to do something to rejuvenate your batteries, or you're going to run low.
Right.
And our loved ones feed off of our energy. So if we're anxious and yelling and screaming, guess what's going to happen?
They're
They're
going
going to
to
get
be.
angry
Mm-hmm.
and yell and scream. And it's hard to remain calm all the time. And I want to tell people, Jeannie, there's no such person as a perfect caregiver. There isn't. We all make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Don't beat yourself up. Um, I always say, if you think you're perfect, call us. I want to interview you.
Yeah, I know you say that a lot. I want to talk to that. She'll say, I want to talk to that person, that one that thinks that they're the best. So there really isn't. But I think it's just once in a while to throw out these different types of interviews and remind, caregivers that there are people out there that are willing to support you and not make any comments. Just be there for you, because no one wants to hear comments back, bad ones anyways, I think. What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I have to say, Jeannie, I actually have to say that my group, there's many groups out there that are great. In my group, hashtag Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement, there's no judgment. It's a small group, supportive group. There's a lot of education linked on there. And no problem is too small to talk about. If it's a problem for you, it's a problem. Caregivers think, oh, well, someone has it much worse. Yes, they do. And some have it better. But if you're struggling, then it's a problem. Talk about it. See what can help.
Right, definitely. We just had a comment here, first of all, from Jennifer Tosani, and she said this is very powerful. And then we have another gentleman, Sani Rihan. He was talking about I don't know how the Israel military dogs would apply here, but do they have dogs for dementia patients at some point? Have you heard of that one?
I heard of like mechanical dogs, as far as to help, or mechanical babies.
Yeah,
that do help someone. There might be pets for dementia. I'm not sure, but and I don't even know where you could go look for that.
I guess just to probably do a Google, but you're just trying to show different ways that there are different things that can apply that for the caregiver or the patient. But before we close, can you just talk a little bit about medicine and how it does affect the patient sometimes? You noticed it on Matt, correct?
Yes. Yeah. This is where, Jeannie, the caregiver has to educate themselves. If you think your loved one's having a side effect, you need to call the doctor. I had that even with Matt's patch, Exelon patch. He had an increase and he fell. And he told me he felt like he was drunk. So I called the doctor, and the doctor said, no, it doesn't cause that. And I went, oh, yes, I read about it. It does. Change him back to the other dosage. And then Matt didn't have a problem.
Right.
When Matt was hallucinating, and near the end, the medicine wasn't helping. As a matter of fact, with a lot of these medicines, they can cause drowsiness, unsteady gait, balance. Falls can happen. And you need to report anything. Don't be afraid to call the doctor, and don't think that, oh, I'm being stupid by calling. No, you're not being stupid. You're being.
Oh gosh, I think we lost her for a few minutes. I hope not. I hope she's able to come back, folks, because this was a really interesting conversation. She has a wealth of information. She is an advocate. Here she is. She's back.
I got dropped.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't worry.
I got dropped. But yeah, I say it's better to be safe than sorry. Don't, you have to question. I was an advocate for Matt all the way to the end. I had an awful home hospice experience where they didn't believe that I was giving the medication correctly and telling me that I'm calling, too much. And
right. Tell them about how hospice works when if your loved one can speak so many words.
Yes. When Matt was interviewed, I call it the uptake or the interview.
Yeah.
When he went on hospice, the nurse said to me, does Matt talk? I said, yes. She said, well, I'll pretend I didn't hear that so he could be admitted to hospice. Because if he talks, now this is what the nurse said, he can't be on hospice. And then when the home hospice nurse came, she heard Matt talk. She said, Matt talks? I said, yes. Well, if he talks in 3 months, he can't be on hospice. I said, you mean to tell me he could hallucinate, be incontinent, need 24/7 care because he says a few words when you're here, he doesn't qualify? That's ridiculous. She said, it's not them, it's Medicare. Medicare has different criteria for a dementia client versus someone with cancer.
Right.
It really makes me mad.
Yeah.
That has to change.
I probably think at some point, don't you think that because of you and all the other caregivers, at some point they're going to have to revise that kind of stipulation?
I think they're going to have to revise it, Jeannie, because baby boomers are going to be slammed with this.
Mm-hmm.
And what are they going to do? They can't reject everybody because they say a few words. I asked the hospice doctor about that.
What did he say?
And he said that it goes by, criteria, but there's a way they could finagle that. A lot of, weight loss. Matt had extreme weight loss. And, he needed to be, well, I thought hospice was going to give me comfort or Matt comfort. But in my situation, unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Not all hospices are the same. I would highly recommend, from my own experience, hire someone to navigate that process for you if you can. I wish I did.
Would have helped you out more immensely, and not something because it was a very stressful time for you also, because it was this was all happening now with Matt around the holidays.
Yes.
Yes.
He was put on hospice the day after Thanksgiving, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And he was home for 3 weeks, and then he went up to the hospital unit, a hospice unit. Gotta get that straight.
Yes.
But it was a fight, Jeannie. I had to advocate for Matt. I had to fight. They thought they were dealing with a meek, quiet housewife, and they soon found out I have a big mouth.
Well,
I'm a mama bear.
yeah, I realize. Yeah, you have to though. There are points of time when you have to speak up for your loved one because they speak for themselves. So who's going to speak for them? The caregiver is going to speak for them, right? That's what you did. You defended to make sure that he was taken care of even to the bitter end.
Yes. And, Jeannie, we've talked about this. If nobody speaks up, nothing is going to change.
That's right.
We have to speak up. And caregivers speak up. I told that social worker, what did I have to put her in her place? But I told her, I said, caregivers to speak up. We're not taking this crap anymore of not being listened to.
Right.
I told her, we know our loved ones better than any doctor. If we say there's something wrong, there's something wrong. I complained that medicine wasn't working and they were giving more of the same. And I said, this is insanity. And I'm telling you, it's not working. I even told the home hospice nurse Matt was at the end of life. She said, no, he's not. He's walking, he's talking, he's eating. And I said, I'm telling you, he's at the end of life. Think outside the box and educate yourself.
Right.
2 weeks later, he was gone. We know.
You're with him constantly. You're with him 24/7. Who's going to know him better than you, the caregiver?
Right.
No one thinks that just because you don't have a medical degree doesn't mean you don't understand what's going on with that person. And I think the medical community better come off their high horse a little bit and start pay attention to these caregivers because they're the ones. They're the ones who are going to help you solve this in some way.
That's right. I think I caused a tsunami in that hospital because people would come into my room and wanted to see who I was.
Yeah.
They wanted to know who the big mouth was. They saw this 5-foot person.
Yeah. Right.
Even the hospice chaplain would try to argue with me. I was like so blown away because I said I felt that Matt suffered more than he should have. And she said, well, he's not suffering now. I said, well, that's because he just got shut up with morphine. That's not your job as a hospice chaplain to argue with somebody, whether they're suffering or not. That's how that person feels. I would have liked to have seen more understanding, more compassion. I think hospice all over needs to really educate themselves on terminal agitation. What does it look like in a younger onset person? That person might be walking around and they're dying. They may not be in bed, being bedridden, such as Matt
Yeah,
was walking.
yeah. Well,
So,
well, we're
I,
coming to the end, so we were going on longer than we thought I anticipated. But because it's such an interesting subject, I think, you know. But is there any closing words you'd like to say to our listening audience?
yes, follow your instinct, follow your gut, because it won't steer you wrong. If you think there's something that's not right, go to another doctor, call your doctor up, and keep seeking that until you get peace. And
Mhm.
please, caregivers, take care of yourself. It's very, very important. You have a right to a life after this is over. You do.
Very good advice. Very good. Thank you so much, Betsy, for being here with us and giving your thoughts and ideas and suggestions of what have learned through the years with being a caregiver. Also, we want to thank Jane Moore from the World Rock Against Dementia for inviting Passionate World Talk Radio to be part of this great event that they were having. They have it every year, and this one is called the World Rock Against Dementia 21. So Jane Moore and Heather Pearson is also another person that has been an advocate on helping us out with different information that we post for them also. And these two, Jane Moore and Heather Pearson, they come from England. And so, and it's been a pleasure and a privilege to be associated with this organization. So thank you, everyone, for listening in. And if you have any questions, you can always contact Betsy Wertzel. I'll show her email quickly. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. We'll get
Thanks,
it.
Mimi. I want to
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you very much, Betsy, for being on. We appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, you can contact me, Jeannie White, at PWRN Network at llc@gmail.com. Betsy, your email address?
Sloan, SLOAN, Betsy31 @gmail.com. Sloan
Okay.
is my married name.
Oh, you okay. All right. Thank you again, Betsy. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Jeannie White signing off. Have a good day. Have a great and safe Memorial Day. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. How was that, Jeannie?
Wait a second. It hasn't shut off yet. I don't know why it's not shutting off. Great. Holy cow.